I think we mentioned this before when I was on, but it was one of the episodes that I was on, which back in the height of it, I don't know, like 3 times ago that I was out here. What was the one that went to fauCi, responded to you? And the thing that they found appalling was that your advice to young people was to be really healthy.
Yeah.
That you were like, listen, get yourself in really good shape. Like exercise a lot, eat well, get a lot of sunlight if you can. If you can't, take vitamin D. You know what I mean? Like, but it was
stuff. They were upset that I was saying if you're a young person, you're like 21 years old or whatever, don't do it. I don't think you need to do it.
No,
I would
your
tell
advice
them.
was I wouldn't advise you to get the vaccine. I'd tell you just be really healthy.
But that was at the time when we actually knew the statistics of how it affected young people.
And at the same time, fauCi was going door to door, and what he was telling people was, you got to take this vaccine. And when they'd give him pushback and say, yeah, but I heard you can still get COVID even after you take the vaccine, and he'd say, in the unlikely event that you get it, it's going to be so mild you won't even know you were sick. Just lying to them. Yeah. And that's not like, oh, he got it wrong. There was no scientific evidence to like argue that. They never even tested it on transmission.
Not only that, when you go over the trials that they did when they first were investigating the efficacy of this drug, one of the people in the COVID group that got the vaccine died of COVID. Yeah. So they knew that.
Yep.
2 people in the placebo group died of COVID.
So that's 100%.
That's how they came up with the fact. It sounds so crazy, and I didn't believe it when RFK Jr. was saying it. I didn't believe that was accurate. But then he actually sent me the real paperwork, and you read it, and you go, wow, that's really what it was. There was 2 people that died in the placebo group. 1 person died in the vaccinated group, and 2 is 100% more than 1.
Yep.
So that's how it's 100% effective in stopping death.
And so this guy Tom Woods, I don't know if you've ever heard of Tom Woods before. He's a brilliant historian. He does a podcast called The Tom Woods Show. Great guy, good friend of mine. And he was like one of the loudest anti-lockdown voices back when the lockdown started, and like did a great job of like putting together all the data and all the arguments on how this isn't actually working and it's like an insane policy, and then was solid on the vaccine and all that all the way through. He told this story. It was in like his newsletter that he writes, which was very interesting to me. Kind of like demonstrated the whole like where trust in the institutions is. So he was at I don't know, I think he's in his 50s. So he was at a doctor's appointment, he said, and his doctor was like, oh, you know, because your age or whatever, you can get the shingles vaccine now. So I'd recommend you get it. It's 87% effective against shingles. And he was basically saying, any time before the last 3 years, I would have just gone, okay, you know, I trust my doctor. If it says, okay, sure, I don't want to get shingles, so I better take this vaccine. But now, he goes, I'm forced to go, well, how did you come up with this number? Is it like the ridiculous way you came up with the COVID vaccine number? So like, no, I'm not going to take that because now I have to go and actually look into this. And that's kind of, I think, where a lot of people are. Like, that's where I am. Yeah. That I would have always assumed that, like, I don't know if my doctor's telling me this. He's done his research. He wouldn't just be telling me this without having looked into it. He knows better than me about this field. So I'll say, now I never trusted the CDC or, you know what I mean? Like, I always knew government entities were corrupt, but I figured my local doctor would kind of like not just recommend something to me. And that was a big thing that COVID exposed, that, oh, even that guy. Well, and I got in arguments with my kid's pediatrician over this, where I had clearly done more research than he had. Like, I knew shit that he didn't know, and he's recommending this to my kids, you know, which was insane. But that's where, like, a lot of people are at now.
Well, they're financially incentivized, and that's where it got spooky. They financially incentivized people to mark deaths as COVID deaths. They financially incentivized initially people getting them put on ventilators. There was a lot of financial incentives that went into this, and I also wasn't aware, you know, embarrassingly so, that most hospitals are just private businesses. I never thought of it that way. I thought of a hospital has got to be like something that's set up entirely to make people better. And that's all they care about. They're not trying to make money.